all the new and returning players in the finals Season 3, I've decided to create a list of all the weapons in the game and where they stand in the current meta. But before I can continue on with the video, I have a really quick disclaimer. You guys can use whatever you want or find the most fun. I am not telling you that you have to use the guns I rank the highest, or that you can't do well with the guns that I rank the lowest. This whole list is just my opinion, and is more so a guideline on the general state of the meta in the game at the moment. This ranking is going to be based mainly on a weapon's performance in ranked terminal attack and world tour, so I am not considering how good a weapon is on power shift or bank it in these rankings. Here's what all the tiers mean for the purposes of this video. S tier has some of the best and most consistent guns in the game. A tier has weapons that are very powerful but are either harder to use or aren't as versatile as their S tier counterparts. B has weapons that are still good but can be more situational than the others and might have maps they don't perform as well on. C tier has weapons that are good in niche situations but lack versatility. D tier has weapons that can be fun in casual modes but are simply too inconsistent for most players in ranked play. The spear, paired with either the charging slam or the winch claw, can be a very effective combo in many lobbies and doesn't require you to have particularly good aim to pull off. However, at higher levels of gameplay, players will realize you are running a melee weapon and adapt their playstyle accordingly. The weapon also suffers in usability when cashouts are in the open. The spear is a pretty solid weapon that is going to go into the B tier. Just like the spear, the sledgehammer can be very fun, especially paired with the winch claw. It also has the added ability to destroy terrain, but doesn't have quite as much range as the spear does. It suffers from some of the same issues that the spear has, which is going to land it in the B tier, but if you are looking to have a fun time and maybe even one-shot an unsuspecting light, this might be a good weapon for you. The SA-12 is a fantastic weapon that is a little harder to use than some of the melee weapons, but will perform better in higher skill lobbies. Pairing it with the winch claw will allow you to get some guaranteed shots even against the dash lights if you use your ability well. The SA-12 is going into the A tier. Unfortunately, the MGL-32 is just not a very good weapon in competitive modes at the moment. The weapon can be a lot of fun in power shift or casual lobbies, but isn't consistent enough to be considered good enough for higher tier play. However, if you personally love the grenade launcher, or just want to have a bit of a laugh and aren't concerned with meta weapons, the grenade launcher can be a fun option for you. It's going to go into the D tier. The M60 has been quite good this season, has really good DPS and a great mag size. The only thing that holds it back is recoil and its performance over range, but if you take good engagements, you can be very effective with this weapon in Season 3. A tier. The Lewis gun is still, in my opinion, the best weapon for heavy in terms of straight consistency. If you can get past the initial recoil, the viability of this weapon is very good. It has good damage over range and is good at closer ranged fights as well. And while yes, the SA-12 might technically be better in those close range engagements, when you pick up the Lewis gun, you are picking consistency and versatility for your team and the ability to fight at any level. S tier. With terminal attack being the new ranked mode this season, the KS-23 stocks have gone up. A shotgun that is viable at longer ranges with the ability to inflict lethal chip damage on opponents in a mode like terminal attack can be very effective if used right. The only downsides to this gun is the long reload time and the lack of hit scan projectiles. A tier. The Flamethrower can be an extremely fun and effective weapon in modes like Power Shift, where it has the ability to hit multiple targets at once. However, in higher ranked play, the Flamethrower loses some of its viability, where it can be easily countered by good players. If you don't have very good aim or just like to incinerate your enemies, this gun can be extremely fun, but might not be the best pick for those higher tier lobbies. For that, it is going into the C tier. If you have good aim, the revolver will serve you extremely well. The inconsistencies of this weapon come from the recoil, as it is a bit jarring at times. If you play a lot of Kovacs or aim labs, this weapon can be very effective in your hands. It's going into the A tier. The medium shotgun is a very good weapon for chip damage and close range engagements, but unlike shotguns in some other games, this weapon requires you to have great aim to use effectively. The longer reload time and unforgiving nature of the weapon are going to keep it in the A tier for me, but it is still one of the best weapons that you can run on medium. While it has had some nerfs since its initial release, the FCAR remains a fantastic choice for medium players. With a clean red dot sight and good damage, the only thing holding this gun back is its aggressive recoil. It's going into the A tier. The FAMAS is a good option for mediums who like to take their fights at a little bit of a distance, but it isn't as good at closer ranges when compared to guns such as the AKM. It's a solid choice for a medium weapon and is a great weapon for getting chip damage and terminal attack, so I'm putting it at the top of B tier. The Riot Shield is going to be a bad weapon for 99% of players, but for the 1% that choose to master it, the weapon can be very effective. However, medium is just not the strongest melee class in the game, and against higher ranked players, the Riot Shield can be very difficult to use. I'm going to put it in D tier with notes saying that it can be a very fun weapon to use and that it has the potential for greatness, but it is simply too inconsistent to get a ton of value from. The dual blades suffer from a lot of the same problems that the Riot Shield has, and are rather inconsistent. However, they are better than the Riot Shield in my opinion, because the deflect gives it some ranged capability that the Riot Shield just doesn't have. A very fun weapon for game modes like Power Shift. I'm going to put it in C tier. With a very small mag size and projectile-based attacks, the CL40 could use some buffs, but it's still a fun weapon to use. Unfortunately, if your opponent is using the APS turret, you're kind of out of luck until it goes away. I've seen some people get to diamond with this gun, but there are better options in terms of weapons with raw dueling capabilities. It's going in the C tier. The AKM is the most consistent gun in the game with a large magazine size that has the ability to burst down heavy shields. It's good at every single range and is the perfect weapon for heal beam mediums. I can't put this fantastic weapon anywhere other than the S tier for its consistency and the utility it provides in high ranked play. Much like the AKM, the XP54 is one of the most consistent weapons in the game, with an emphasis on close to mid-range engagements. The red dot sight makes it a perfect pairing with the cloaking device, and the fire rate is easy to handle. S tier. The V9S has fantastic damage with a really satisfying gameplay loop. It's a very fun weapon to use, but it drops off in viability at some of the longer ranges, and it has very bad iron sights paired with some pretty hard to control recoil. The V9S goes into A tier. The throwing knives got a huge buff right at the end of Season 2. The new buff made the throwing knives become some of the best close range weapons in the game, albeit with a bit of a higher skill ceiling. And while they've nerfed the damage a little bit with the patch that they released today, this change should only be felt when facing medium players, and should still be a great option for dash lights. The only other issue with this weapon is that it becomes almost completely useless at longer ranges. It's going in the A tier. The sword is one of the best melee weapons in the game and can get you some really good kills if you learn how to use it. Since the emote cancelling exploit has been fixed, it's not as good as it once was, but it is still a fantastic weapon for lights on certain maps. B tier. With Power Shift becoming the new ranked mode, the king of chip damage has become much more viable than it previously was. If you have good aim, the SR84 has the potential to be a very valuable asset to your team in ranked this season. However, if you take closer range engagements, the weapon's usability takes a little bit of a nosedive. I've also seen that it is pretty strong in Power Shift, but I'm not going to be letting that influence this ranking for today. B tier. The sawed-off shotgun was quite bad in Season 2, but with the start of Season 3, it got some healthy buffs, which made the weapon viable in high-ranked play again. It has insane DPS with the potential to two-shot heavies, but becomes useless at longer ranges. An A-tier gun that is terrifying in close ranges. The Recurve Bow is a very fun weapon to use, but it's not very competitively viable. The nature of its projectile attacks make it a worse weapon than the sniper at longer ranges, and its DPS makes it worse than the throwing knives at closer ranges. It has the ability to one-shot a light if you get a headshot, so it can be a good swap weapon if you have many light players inside of your game. But other than that niche situation, I have to put it in the C tier. The M11 has secretly been a little bit of a close-range monster for the past few seasons, and has flown under the radar in the ranked scene. It isn't as consistent at range as the XP54, but has the potential to put out crazy damage in the right engagement scenarios. Trust me, hip fire this thing. A tier. Unfortunately, the 9-3R could use some buffs. It's a fun weapon to use, but not the best at anything, and in its current state, there isn't much reason to run this over guns like the XP54, M11, or V9S. If you don't care about the meta, the gun is very fun to use, but it is unfortunately outclassed most of the time. C tier. The Dagger is an interesting weapon. It's very fun to play with the possibility of being able to one-shot opponents with the right click if you can get behind them, but in my personal experience, this opportunity doesn't come as often as you might hope. There is a dash tech that allows you to hit an opponent in the back while you dash at them, but you have to be able to do it perfectly, and it can be very inconsistent. The Dagger goes into C tier, but it has the potential to do very well if you master it. At the start of Season 3, the LH1 was super impressive and had consistently insane DPS at every range. It's been nerfed a little bit as of today, and while it will still feel powerful, it won't be nearly as oppressive and now can be outgunned at shorter ranges by SMGs and shotguns. And for that reason, I'm going to put it at the very top of A tier. Now that's every weapon in the finals ranked. If you think some of these weapons need buffs or nerfs, what changes would you make? Also, what changes would you make to my list? Should some of these weapons be a little bit higher or lower than I put them? Let me know in the comments down below. And with that, thank you all so much for watching.